With the margins we're seeing, obviously what the final outcomes will be dependent upon is a couple of things. The absentee ballots that came in on Tuesday that many counties checked in and finished up already, but some of the larger counties have not yet. So let's go from the top. I'll do this in the order of the largest amount of absentee ballots that we know have been checked in but not actually scanned and uploaded into the results yet. Number one is DeKalb County with 17,902. Let me stop and think. Let me throw every caveat in the world at this. Counties are still putting stuff in. They're also scanning, so these numbers will be a little bit fluid during the day today. But these are the basic ones we have as of 10 a.m. this morning. This is the latest numbers we have available. The next one down is Henry County at 9,078. After that is Cobb at 5,896. Chatham at 5,318. Fulton at 5,294. Gwinnett at 5,068. Thomas at 2,078. Bryan at 1,515. Meriwether at 1,325. Doherty at 1,200. Fayette at 1,139. And Forsyth at 752. They trail off after that. Clayton has some, 528. Lincoln, 543. Peach, 524. But you get the basics. The biggest buckets of them are from the metro area with a handful scattered about the state. We have requested of the counties, we don't have a right to direct them, but we have requested that they get all of the absentee ballots accounted for, as in they have received them, they know they're there, and put into our voter registration system, ENET, as of 1 p.m. today. Most counties will make that deadline. Other ones are working diligently to get through that. But again, I want to remind everybody, these folks are all tired. They've had a long day and a long week and a long month and a long year. But they are doing their best to get these results quickly. I know some people were surprised how quickly the results did come in, but that's the advantage of having 3 races on the ballots. Again, another point of interest for people locally, whereas we've seen both incumbent Republican senators fall behind the vote count, the incumbent Public Service Commissioner, Lauren Bubba McDonald, has continued to maintain his lead. And with the number of ballots out, it looks like he may be able to win as well, but it looks like he will likely be within the margin of the recount, which is a half a point. But again, we don't know until all the ballots are in. And with that, I will take any questions. Yeah, Justin. Sorry. Need more coffee.
Has there been any evidence or any indication of any potential fraud or irregularities?
No evidence of any irregularities. The biggest thing we've seen is from the president's fertile mind of finding fraud where none exists. We've seen a couple of other things. There was somebody put out a tweet that took a picture of shredded paper and said, "We are in Georgia, and here are shredded ballots." So that is the extent of the evidence we've seen. We've had a few things come in on the hotline that might be investigated, but again, we've seen nothing widespread. We've seen nothing that seems real in any way, shape, or form, quite honestly.
Gabriel,
ma'am.
Republicans have suffered a double defeat here with the presidential race and now apparently the 2 Senate races. Where do you think the blame lies within the Republican Party, specifically the Georgia GOP?
I think you've heard this answer from me over the last 24 hours 2 times. President Donald J. Trump. Between him and a couple of other people who ran for office didn't necessarily think it all the way through as to what the outcomes could be. It all comes out of that. When you say your vote doesn't count, then you have people you've laid your hands on and say, these are my people, who say, don't come and vote. Then you spark a civil war within a GOP that needed to be united to get through a tough fight like this in a state that has been trending from the point of view of Republicans the other direction for years now. I mean, let's remember Stacey Abrams, who has yet to concede the 2018 gubernatorial race, came within 55,000 votes of winning that race. So you need to have a unified team with a unified message looking to the future, and that somebody pointed out, I believe it was a CNN commentator, if you looked over the last 2 months, the President of the United States spent more time attacking Governor Kemp and Secretary Raffensperger than he did Raphael, Warnock, and Senator to be probably Ossoff.
And how does that sit with you as a Republican?
It irritates me. What else we got?
What are the numbers that you've seen so far about those that are still outstanding, places that they're located, suggest about whether or not, if Ossoff does win, could that be outside of the recount margin?
Well, right now we look at 60,470 that are available to come in for that. That number will go up as they continue to process ballots from the areas they're from. It makes it look like John Ossoff will likely have a margin outside of the 0.5% to avoid a recount. And obviously Reverend Warnock is ahead of him right now, so if Ossoff avoids that recount, so does Reverend Warnock.
And is there a breakdown of how many of these are potentially absentee ballots that will receive that day?
These are
versus
all
provisional
absentee. These are all
ballots?
absentees. We're one of the other things we're asking for the counties is to get us in the provisional ballots. We know the provisional ballots are going to be in Fulton and DeKalb in the thousands because there's a issue where many Democrat turnout machines say go to any precinct, so people vote out a precinct. In this particular election, it doesn't matter as much because every precinct had the same people on the ballot. But we've got to make sure people get out of the habit of doing that, because if you vote out a precinct in a regular election, you skip all those races in the bottom. So you're really disenfranchising voters when you train them to do that. It's a bad practice.
But you're saying we don't have a read on how many right now total provisional ballots there are potentially?
No, we don't, but we can spitball it since it'll probably be somewhere south of 10,000. Steve.
Are you concerned at all about blurring the line between an election official and a pundit with some of the comments that you made over the last 24 hours and the way that that might be interpreted once the results are questioned by some who are unhappy?
Yeah, on occasion, but people ask my personal opinion, and this is one of those things where it's a weird blended position. And I'm a well-known Republican. I can't really hide that fact, but I try to make sure I walk the line, and I think with the way this office has conducted itself, it would have been a hell of a lot easier for us to go along with some of these presidential claims than to actually stand up for the truth in these cases. So I understand some people have that question. I've had to deal with it on Twitter. Last I checked, I'm an American. I have a First Amendment right to answer some of these things, but I try to separate from my role here and my role when I answer specific political type questions. You're right. But anybody in these positions, every human being alive has opinions. I just tend to be a little more honest about what I think of them, and I think that makes me do my job better and gives me some more credibility when it comes to it. Yes, yes.
On the military ballots, you said yesterday there were about 17,000 outstanding.
We're down to about 14,000 that are still outstanding. It's the military and overseas. I don't have a breakdown between the two different types right now, but it's 14,000 available. And to remind everybody, they can be postmarked by yesterday and be received and accepted by Friday. But historically, it's going to be more than zero that come in. It's going to be a lot less than 14,000 that come in.
How do you, we had...
Oh, hey, Mark, I didn't see you back there. Sorry.
Yeah. We had very high election day turnout yesterday, higher than the presidential election.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that is? What's the explanation for such high election day turnout after, good but not that good early turnout?
Well, a couple of things happened there. In the primary in June, we had 880,000 show up. In the general election, we had 970,000. I'm spitballing here. I've got a lot of numbers in my head right now. And we had 1.3 million show up yesterday. Part of that was, again, the president encouraging Republicans not to use mail or early vote options. And some people are just going to skip it altogether. I think what we saw happen on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday was that the areas that had seen depressed turnout compared to metro areas started to show up. And I think there's what happened in some partisan circles, Republican sides, it started dawning on them, oh crap, we're going to lose this if we don't turn out. So there was a real big push to get people out the last day. But the Democrats did a very good job of banking their votes early and using the options that have been available to the Georgians for over a decade. So there's nothing new here. These are all tools that have been available. Coronavirus changed some voting patterns and behaviors. Georgia is historically a in-person voting state. So I think part of it is just people getting used to doing it again. The threat of coronavirus, while it's going up and some people it's perceived as going down. And just let me say this, for the elections workers and the launching of a new system, this state, this office, and these counties launched the largest new voting system in the history of the United States and did it in record time, executed it well, in the middle of a pandemic, and had record turnout in each and every election we saw. That is unprecedented. And I want to give a big thank you again to the elections officials and poll workers and elections workers who really worked their tails off to make this a successful election for Georgians. One of the things we haven't heard about in this election was nobody was complaining about lines. Nobody's saying they were disenfranchised. Everybody who wanted to vote had an opportunity to vote, and we feel very proud of that fact.
And have you looked at whether election day turnout was higher than expected or lower than expected in Republican or Democratic areas?
I haven't had an opportunity to do a breakdown by that. We've been trying to really just stay on the counties and work with them to get sure we get like I said before, fast is good, accurate is better. Analysis can come later to see the specifics. We want to make sure we get the right results out to take away the opportunity for people to say that there was fraud and there's questions to be had about these things, because these are the results. These are the ballots. We have known since last week, since last Friday, that there were going to be 2,073,000 and some odd votes that were going to be cast in the advanced bucket, because that was how many were cast. The president continues to say, oh, they're finding ballots. These were advanced that came out of nowhere. No, we have known that DeKalb County had 171,000 ballots since Friday evening, Saturday morning. So the statements he keeps on putting out there are incorrect, and they undermine people's faith in the election process. And again, this is a bipartisan problem. If you go back and do polls from 2016 of Democrat voters, there are over 50% that still believe Russians hacked voting machines to say they flip votes for Donald Trump. That didn't happen. You know what else didn't happen? Dominion machines did not flip votes for Joe Biden. Neither of those things happened. And everybody on both sides of the aisle who continue to make these kinds of claims undermine the election process in the country, undermine democracy, and undermine the health of the republic.
Have you received any inquiries or complaints from either of the two, or any of the candidates on anything that has happened thus far, or any indication?
I think it's a little early right now for that, but I fully anticipate we will have questions, and there may be legitimate questions out there from people, and it's our job to answer them as frankly as we can with the facts as best we can, as quickly as we can. Yes.
When do you need by 1 p.m. from the counties if they would?
We made a request of them because in Georgia, the cutoff time to receive absentee ballots, other than the military and overseas, is 7 p.m. on election day. That's when the drop boxes get locked down, and the mail comes in. Nothing else can come in after that. So while they're busy doing election day activities, it's hard to say, we're going to have a group of people over here while the rest of us are counting. You go deal with absentee ballots. Some of these counties are under-resourced. Some of them have big staffs, but they're exhausted and focused on getting one thing done at a time. So what we did is we're asking them, account for all the ballots you have in so that we can tell the press, and the press can tell the voters, this is the outward bound of the number of ballots we can have to count, so we know where there actually is, or it can give the press and political talking heads the opportunity to make a call. And in this particular case, the last couple of calls to be made are in the PSC race and in the Ossoff Perdue race. What else? Yes, ma'am.
In terms of high turnout, newly registered voters, does your office have any insight into those numbers and how they may have played a role since general?
Not yet, but I will say one thing. It was an impressive feat by whoever did it to get 100,000 people to show up on a January election who did not show up in a November election. That is probably a margin. My assumption is that those are probably Democrat voters, given the demographics we've seen of that, and that is a testament to hard work that was done. While Republicans were busy attacking the governor and my boss, the Democrats were out there knocking on doors and getting people to turn out to vote.
And it's looking
Yes.
like North Georgia had a drop-off in voting. Is that what you're seeing as well?
Well, I haven't had a chance to dig deep into it, but people who I trust have stated that, so I will accept that it's likely true, and that is the area where we believe that, like Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, along with the president, have essentially, through their actions and their statements, discouraged voting by Republican voters, which have ended up hurting both of our incumbent senators.
And were there any areas of turnout that surprised you?
Frankly, all of them did. I mean, this is a runoff. We had 4.3 million votes cast, so almost 4.4. We had 5 million cast in general election. That is unheard of. In 2018, we had 4 million votes cast in the original. In the runoff, there was 1.485 million. The record previously for a runoff was 2.1 million with Saxby-Chambliss. I mean, this blows every turnout model away. Now, let me say this with one caveat. When you spend $500 million of money from out of state, you can get people to turn out. So that's the other thing that's a little bit different than most runoffs.
Okay.
One more?
last
Okay.
question. You mentioned, you were very complimentary of how things went, and there were no lines, and people didn't have to wait. Is there intention then from the Secretary of State's office to keep some of these methods that were put in place for COVID-19, but obviously made it a lot easier for more people to vote?
The thing is, all these methods have been available for decades in this state. So the one thing we do have an issue with that makes it very difficult in the counties is because of the increased use of the absentee process. Essentially, there's a 3-week period where they have to run 3 elections at a time, essentially. You have to run the 3 weeks of early voting. Then you have to run an absentee ballot program that literally by law begins 45 days beforehand. So you're running that the entire time. And then about 2 weeks before the actual election, you have to do the processes of the general election. these people are understaffed, they're underpaid, they're under-resourced. So something has to give on that one. So right now we have no excuse absentee. We may see a move by the legislature to move to an excuse-based system and taking away signature match by having a specific photo ID or unique identifier PIN like other states do, driver's license, state ID, Social Security number as a specific identifier that is binary, as opposed to having a signature match, which can be viewed as subjective and kind of undermines people's faith in the system to a degree, because like, oh, anybody could choose to take those signatures in. We don't know who actually did it. So we're going to see reforms, I guarantee that. But one of the things I will say is this is one of the easiest states to register. This is one of the easiest states to vote. It's very easy to vote and very hard to cheat. Yes, ma'am.
Can you recap the situation in Fulton County yesterday and the lawsuit that was filed in terms of the monitors?
Yeah. So they're at Georgia World Congress Center. That's a big place. So it's a difficult thing to allow people to move in and around the stuff that you're doing. Now, Fulton did a few extra things that I think were inappropriate given the way the law is written. The intention of the law is to allow monitors and the public to view the voting process, and that includes signature match, that includes counting, that includes all of that. Unfortunately, Fulton County put up some opaque barriers, so you couldn't see anything that they were doing. Now, their argument, and there's a push and pull with this, the state mandates that you protect the personal identifying information of individual voters and the secrecy of their vote. That's one side. It also says, hey, you have to let everybody see what's going on. So you have to have a balance between those things. In our opinion, and in the court's opinion, obviously, Fulton County went a little bit too much on the side of keeping monitors away. So they settled, Judge Barwick entered a consent order with the Republican Party, I think the Fulton County Republican Party and Fulton County, and they kind of split the baby. They were keeping them 20 feet away, they made it 10 feet away. They took down the opaque barriers, they put down tape that allowed them to get. Transparency is a better thing for people to feel more. Is that it? All right, thank you very much.
Do you expect to do this again today?
Maybe not here, if we do this again. If we do this again, it may be at another location. Has yet to be determined, but it probably has a shiny gold dome on top.
We're setting up our show or something. We got to keep our guys waiting on there. Where are we going?
That number there is
It's nice.
60,000.
Thank you. Good job.
No. Good to see you.